Hello and welcome. In the middle of August, we ran a online webinar to discuss how to upskill yourself as a DPO, specifically in the GCC region. This is a summary of the presentation and the webinar that we gave with the main learning points. So we were looking at various different kinds of certifications, things like the IAP, BCS and ISACA, then the kinds of certifications that are usually issued by companies that have developed privacy management and data security management platforms. And then finally, some other kinds of certifications that are a little bit less well recognized than things like the IAP, but things by the EC Council, EXIN, and PECB. We also looked at the advantages of university courses, and then we took a dive into those courses that are purely online, the Udemy and Coursera, and then other university courses, things like Harvard Online. We were thinking about security certifications, but we're not really doing much of a dive into this because we have to remember that security is of course, just 1/7 of data protection. These courses are not usually law-based. They go into privacy, absolutely, but they usually discuss privacy just as a program, and they're usually policy and controls based rather than really getting into the nitty-gritty of how to apply the law. So much respect I have for security certifications. I respect people who have them, but my feeling is that security certifications are not really a replacement for learning about data protection and privacy. How do we measure courses? Now, the one thing to remember is that courses often will open the door for you to be able to get in front of the right audience that will assess you and then maybe hire you. But you have to understand how to measure these courses, what is valuable, what is not. And the heart goes in, the heart of it is all around credibility. And what is credibility made up of? Well, a course is credible if the exam, if there is an exam and the exam is difficult. That's kind of what gives something credibility. The reputation that the exam has. What is the cost of the exam? Obviously, the more, a free course may not have the same credibility because anyone can access it, whereas a course that might cost you a couple of $1,000s might have a lot more credibility to it because you've had to not just invest your brain and your time, but you've had to invest money into it. It also matters what is in job descriptions, and this is a really important point. Whenever I mentor people, I ask them, where do you want to be in 3 years and 5 years from now? And they kind of tell me, and I say, well, how are you going to prepare to become that person? And then they don't know. The advice I give them is look at the job descriptions being published for the kinds of roles you want 3 years from now and see what are the requirements in terms of experience and certifications. And then you've got 3 years to achieve that experience and achieve those certifications. But credibility of something is you can establish it by seeing what keeps on coming up in job descriptions. Of course, the missing ingredient is, does the course teach you how to do things in practice? That is one of the most important issues, and we'll go into that towards the end of this. So we started assessing these kinds of courses. So we started off with the IAP courses, and the IAP offer a large suite of courses, and we thought it would be a useful thing to do a bit of a dive into what are these different courses and what is their value. So the IAP menu is extensive. The one that keeps on coming up is the SIP-E. Now the SIP-E is a European privacy law. It's a good thing to do, even if you are in the Middle East, if you are in a GCC country, because remember, 80 to 90% of all data privacy laws around the world are heavily based on or aligned with the GDPR. The big exceptions, of course, are places like China, places like North America. But if you do the SIP-E, you do a very, very deep dive into how all of the law works. And this is a very, very good foundation for being able to not just understand, but prove that you understand how things work. There is a SIP Asia, which is a lot less common. The one thing to remember is that for the purposes of IAP, uh, the Gulf states do not fall within Asia, and so this absolutely does not cover the requirements that you have. Because this is less well known, I would suggest that this probably has less credibility than the SIPI and probably is less applicable. The SIP US is a very important certification, particularly because so much data moves back and forth between the rest of the world and the US. But the SIP US sounds quite difficult because in America, you have a federal law, which is actually about consumer rights, and then you have a patchwork of state laws. So out of the 50 odd states, somewhere between 15 and 20 have privacy laws, but they're all different to each other. So you're learning lots and lots of different privacy regimes. This sounds really tough to pass. The SIP-M is the Certified Information Privacy Manager. This is supposed to teach you how to run a privacy program. It's orientated towards very, very large companies and conglomerates. And this course kind of teaches you strange, sort of very old-fashioned theories on stakeholder management and things like that. It doesn't really teach you that much about privacy as such. It kind of teaches you how to interface and talk with people. I'm not really sure there's much value in this, but it is a well-recognized certification, and I, in fact, myself have it. The CIPT was the Certified Information Privacy Technologist. This seems to have fallen a little bit out of fashion. This sounds like a really, really good but extremely challenging course for people who do not have a technology background. So somebody like me who studied philosophy and theology at university has never significantly worked around technology other than data privacy work. This might have been a really, really good certification to go for, and I was seriously thinking about doing this, although for someone who's not technical, it sounds very, very, very difficult to do. However, the reason why I'm not doing it is because AI is now on the rise, and the IAP AIGP the AI governance professional certification seems to be the one that people are going. Most of the big intersections with technology now are around AI, and this is where people are hiring. So this sounds like a good thing to do. Although this sounds quite difficult, partly because there's no unified textbook and the syllabus is extremely broad, and it has to be remembered that very little of it is about privacy. AI governance is not all about privacy. It's about all of the other elements that go into building AI in a compliant way. So once you start doing this, yes, it will of course help you on your privacy journey, but it won't necessarily help you that much. It will help you deal with AI. And then at the end, there's the Fellow of Information Privacy, which is where you get two certifications and you have 3 years experience. You can write and get 3 letters of recommendation from other people with IAP certifications, and you may well be awarded this. So lots and lots of things to think about with the IAP certifications. There is a BCS, the British Computing Society. This is very, very local to the UK. The the syllabus is actually very similar to the IAP, although it's less focused on the rest of Europe, more focused on the UK. Nonetheless, it's quite a credible exam to do. The exam fee is actually, the IAP fees are around $550. Off the top of my head, I think this is about half the price. So if you want to do a proper exam and test yourself under harsh conditions, and do one before you do the IAP, you could probably give the BCS one a go, which does have some credibility, but not much outside of the UK. The next one is the ISACA, the Certified Data Protection Engineer. This is an excellent course. I've looked at this. I'm extremely tempted to do it if I can find the time. This seems to look into the same kind of issues as the IAP in a little bit less detail, but a significant chunk of this is around the engineering, the technology part of it. So I think someone like me that does not have a technology background might really benefit from this, whereas the CIPT, the Certified Information Privacy Technologist, might be too difficult and demanding. So in terms of credibility, you certainly find IAP being quoted all the time. You often find ISACA being quoted. You never really find the BCS being quoted in job descriptions around the Gulf. When you look at these, now these are companies that have developed privacy management platforms, and this is my personal opinion, their platforms are difficult to use and not intuitive. And so instead of getting people to sit down and do endless tutorials, which would turn off customers, they've turned their tutorials into certifications, and then people start chasing them. All of these certifications are free, they're online. Frankly, I mean, I did some OneTrust ones because I needed to understand how the platform worked. I did one of the exams over breakfast on my smartphone in about 10 minutes while having breakfast with my wife. They're good things to do if you need to know how to use these platforms. Will they teach you much about privacy? No. What they teach you is how to use their kind of unwieldy and difficult platforms. Nonetheless, you do find these in job descriptions in some places, but I just don't think they have very much credibility outside of that at all. There are, of course, these other courses which are not quite as prestigious as, say, the IAP or the ISACA, not quite as globally well recognized. They're about half to three quarters of the cost of the ISACA or the IAP courses. You'll have to look to see whether you think that they are particularly credible. I think if you announce that you have these, that's great, but the chances are that when someone is asking for an IAP certification, while they'll look at your application, if you're competing with someone with a more credible certification, you might get beaten. So there's plenty of value in these, and they're certainly a lot cheaper. However, it's not clear that they have the same level of credibility. There are university courses, specifically master's degrees, which you can do online. They're usually quite expensive, somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000. And of course, being master's degrees, they will take you 2 to 3 years to do. They are extremely prestigious things to do. The problem is that obviously these are both based in Europe. They never ever seen them in job descriptions, never ever seen them being asked for in Gulf regions. If you have them and you can say, I have an LLM or a postgraduate certificate in information law, then that would be a prestigious thing to absolutely do. But it's not really asked for, and the cost, I think, is quite high. These are, I think, of more value if you are actually in. And then finally, you have these kind of online courses, Udemy and Coursera. Now, not all Udemy and Coursera courses are free. Obviously, sometimes you have to pay for them. The problem is that if you've done them on these platforms, then people don't understand whether there is an exam or not, whether you had to pay for it or not. And so you very rarely get these kind of things in job descriptions. Even the Harvard Online Privacy course is not cheap. It's I can't remember. I think it's a couple of $1,000s. It's a lot of money. The problem is it's an online course, and so people kind of bucket this in with all the others and just assume, oh, it's just some random small course they did, wasn't very difficult, was probably free. It doesn't have much credibility. For your own professional development, it may be very, very useful, but in terms of opening that door to an interview, probably it won't do it. Now, moving on to practical learning, obviously the thing to accept is that you will make mistakes without a doubt. But however, what you will then also do is you will learn from those mistakes. And that is what practical learning is about. I would think about doing the practical learning from the kind of following sources. So if you are lucky enough to have a boss and you are lucky enough to have a team, work out how you can learn. Think about maybe once a fortnight doing a short in-house seminar where somebody leads on it and talks about a particular area of case law, and then everyone has a discussion about how that has an impact on your daily work. Think about your networks. I mean, places like social media, places, your local community of data protection people, and work out how you can do learning with them. This might just be meeting up once a month for an informal chat. This might be just having a WhatsApp group. Now, you can go with more formal groups. Now, the two that I would point out is one is NADPO, the National Association of Data Protection Officers. This is a UK group. The membership is about $100, $110 for the year. You get access to all sorts of online webinars, and they're extremely academic and practical. Obviously, they're much more focused on the UK and Europe, but that's not a bad thing. You really get into the rhythm of learning and understanding how data protection law has an impact on all sorts of things. IAP as a group in Saudi and in various other countries, you can become a member without even passing an exam. You have to pay a fee, and then you can get into the network there and start going to their events, which might be a very useful learning space. Think about LinkedIn. Who can you link to on LinkedIn that is talking about this kind of stuff? For example, we publish a weekly newsletter, which is theoretical, but then is also sometimes very, very practical and teaches you how to think about data protection. What websites can you go onto? What newsletters can you subscribe to? And then finally, as I kind of mentioned earlier, user groups. Think about those online communities, email groups, WhatsApp groups, etc. Get into them, ask questions, try and get answers when other people ask questions. Listen very carefully, because there are lots of people trying to solve the same problems as you. You can read about the applications of the law. So DIFS, which is the regulator for the trade-free zone in the UAE, has lots of resources on its website, which is incredibly friendly and very, very useful. They also have summaries of the kinds of enforcement actions they take, plenty of learning from there. I would I would get a membership of GDPR Hub. It's free. What it does is it lists every single kind of GDPR case that there is. You can search by section. You can kind of go, where did consent go wrong? How much would people find? What were the lessons to learn? All of that information is there. And if you start regularly reading from here, then you will learn a huge amount. We have a link here to our own newsletter, which I would recommend that you do subscribe to. And then finally, the European Data Protection Board publishes opinions, and then because it's all in English, the ICO, which is the equivalent of SODIA, but for the UK, they publish a wealth of guidance on their websites, and you can usually get 90% of your questions around Gulf data protection laws answered here, although you have to be aware of where the UK is different to your local laws. But when you're trying to learn how to be practical, always go back to the basics. The most important thing when you are trying to learn how to practice is to understand the business. If you do not understand, if you just understand the law, but you don't understand the operations of your business, you are not going to succeed. Understand the business, go and meet people, get into their team meetings, introduce yourself, understand their processes, understand the pressures on them, understand their commercial issues. That's how you will become an effective data protection partner to them. But then when you're dealing with something, always go back to the same questions. Like, they want to do something, ask them, what is the data? What are you going to do with the data? Where did you get the data from? What is the data life cycle? And then what are the risks and how do we manage them? If you always constantly go back to this short list of questions, then that is usually the gateway into being able to understand what the business wants to do, and then moving that to a data privacy. So this presentation was done originally by Laura Paramariello, my fellow director. My name is Bilal Ghafour. Our email addresses are there. Do get in touch for any further questions at all. Thank you. Bye-bye.